Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in. And with that, the 2023 season comes to an end. We have a world champion in all three classes. We had an extremely spicy weekend. In terms of MotoGP, it was crazy. I can't believe that the year's over already. I'm so hyped for the test on Tuesday. I may do a bonus pod for that. I'm hyped for next year. Overall, it was a truly sensational season. And talking of the test, we've got Marc Marquez hopping on a Ducati. We've got Franco Morbidelli hopping onto a Ducati current spec. Alex Rins going to Yamaha. But for now, I'm going to try and keep the same routine that I normally do. Let's start with Moto3, because for the very first time in 2023, Ayumu Sasaki stepped on the top step of the podium. I'm so happy. Happy tears here for sure. Last weekend, we had sad tears. He lost the World Championship. This year, took the top step. This race. He took that top step. Not only did he take the top step, it put him 6 points behind Masia for winning the championship. It also means that he gets that win. We've seen him so many times get passed. Very, very late. Always coming second place. Last lap moves from the rest of the grid to put him in second after he's led so much. In P2 was David Alonso. I'm so glad he didn't put that last lap move on Sasaki, because that would have broken my heart. In P3 we had Ivan Ortola. In P4, Colin Vaya. And I have to shout out P5, podcast favourite, Dennis Onchu. I am really looking forward to seeing him in Moto2 next year. I want to give this shout out to him, not only because he's our podcast favourite, but he had a massive high side prior to the race. He had a small fracture in his back, and he still manages to put it in P5. Incredible performance from him. Very excited to see him in testing and in Moto2 next year. It'll be better suited to him with his size, and it's just another dynamic that I'm looking forward to. Over in Moto2, we saw a terrifying first lap incident. Fortunately, all riders are okay. We don't know the extent of okay, but it does look like no bad injuries. What happened is it looked like Sergio Garcia high-sided. With Garcia always being strong at Valencia, I was definitely picking him for some podium potential. But he high-sided, ends up just off the racing line, off the track. He gets run over square in the middle of his back. It's one of those terrifying moments. But he was immediately sitting up and is conscious, which is the main thing. We do know he went to hospital for further examination. He is going to be reviewed before the race, so this does make it seem like we will have minimal, if any, injuries, which is truly incredible. He was run over by his teammate, and there was no way to avoid it. And this could have been a horrific accident. Watching anyone get run over is truly terrifying. We have seen it a few times this year. This is motorcycle racing. It's always going to be scary, and no matter how much we like to avoid it, these things are going to happen. Thankfully, Garcia is going to be okay. This is the best thing we can hope for in this situation, because we need to look at Tate. He was in the paddock this weekend as a guest of Alicia Spargaro. If you're not following Carlos Tate's situation, I will be doing a bit of a breakdown in the off season, because it looks like insurance, governments, they're fighting over who has to pay his medical treatment, which is absolutely disgusting. So Carlos Tate is stuck in this limbo situation. I will be doing deep dives into it, going through interviews. They are all in Spanish, so it's going to take me a bit of time to translate it. But overall, it's a horrible situation. He can't even pay for things like his wheelchair. I know the paddock will rally around him, but he should not be in this situation in the first place. He's kept up to date and did absolutely everything he should have done. He should have been covered, financially for these medical bills. Riders shouldn't be in this situation where they have to worry about this. They're out there riding for our entertainment, put their lives on the line for this, and it's not acceptable that this situation is occurring. But as I said, I'll be doing a deep dive into that in the off-season. And this incident with Sergio Garcia was horrific, but it's not the only incident we saw, which is surprising to me because Moto2 is, I suppose, what I consider to be the more mild racing. Moto3 is like herding cats. But in Moto2 this weekend, we saw a lot of spicy moments. Multiple riders crashing. Quite unexpected. I believe in Moto2 there were actually 6 riders that didn't finish this race, which, like I said, is a bit spicy for this race. Admittedly, it's got nothing on MotoGP on Sunday, which was absolutely wild. But I digress. I'm getting off topic. On the podium we had Alonso Lopez. In P2, it was Aaron Canet. I don't know what he has to do to win a race. Maybe it's just not go against the person who is in P1, because it's Formidable Furman. This kid has just clicked. Something, I don't know what it is, but something there has just gelled. Maybe it's the fact he's not going up to MotoGP next year, because that's all been confirmed. His buyout clause looks like, although we're mid-peasants and don't get to see the contracts, it is supposedly a €1.5 million buyout clause. You can't blame them at all. At the moment, they have the hottest property in Moto2. There's rumours he's already pre-signed with Pramac Ducati, which would be a brilliant move by Aldeguer. Overall, it's a wonderful weekend for Speed Up. 2 of their riders on the podium, one of them clearly dominating at the moment. You do have to think this is going to put Furman Aldeguer in serious title contention for next year. I'll probably do a season prediction show before next season, where I do my ultimate predictions for the year. He's definitely going to be up there. Admittedly, we'll have to wait and see. Testing and seeing if others are going to make some steps forward on the chassis, the Calyx chassis that is. I do wonder what Furman would be like on a different chassis, whether it's just the fact he's got this potential, alien potential, sprinkle that word in there. This second half of the season, 4 or 5 races, it's been truly incredible. He is gelled with that machine. He is definitely one to watch. Very exciting prospect, especially given the fact that he is only 18 years old. To me, I'm basically an old maid in the world. My parents, they're like, Kate, it's time to get married, settle down, have some children. No, my parents, I just want to watch bikes go around on a racetrack all the time. It is just so crazy to me that Furman is so young, with so much talent, so much potential. It's just going to be incredible, and I am excited to see him move up to MotoGP. He's got the pace to become a world champion, and maybe we are probably going to see that as Moto2 world champion next year, but I could be getting ahead of myself. The majority of this pod was going to be donated, time-wise, to the Saturday, Sunday of MotoGP. Coming into this weekend, we knew it was a long shot for Jorge Martin. You would not say that after the sprint. He showed so much potential and so much speed in the sprint that he put in just this incredible strong performance that you expected that momentum continue. We saw some really good moves, and in fact this was a sensational sprint. I really enjoyed it, and that's not just because that was the podium of my dreams. Maybe it was just because it was quite clean. Clean races, to me, are great. We did see Fabio Quartararo crash out. Very unfortunate for the Frenchman because he had so much pace in the race. It would have been really good for him to get a good result for Yamaha. Admittedly, he deserved it, but it was unfortunate to see him go down. Two other people that had unfortunate sprints. While they didn't crash out, but Jack Miller's whole shot device, his start device, it didn't work correctly. He had to do things manually. He dropped from P4 to almost second to last. Unfortunately also for Enea Bastianini, he was right behind Jack Miller and it severely impacted his race too. Nothing can really be done about that sort of thing. With technology this advanced, when so much needs to click and work together, all of the moving parts needing to come together, when one thing comes wrong, this sort of thing happens. We saw it again on Sunday in the warm-up with Maverick Vinales, kind of. Something went wrong on his bike, and we saw a huge puff of smoke. He got the meatball flag. He didn't pull over straight away. He continued dawdling off the racing line. He gets penalised for that in the Sunday, but it just shows that everything needs to click. All aspects of the bike need to gel for you to get a good start, let alone a great one. KTM still don't have their starting device. They voluntarily withdrew that and allegedly took out Aprilia's. So Aprilia can't run theirs. KTM can't run them. Overall, a terrible start for Jack Miller. Unfortunate because it was such a great qualifying for him, and it would have been so good to see him on the podium. KTM really deserved some good results, basically. Fortunately, they did get a good result from Brad Binder, who ended up on the podium. He had the pace all sprint. It was an incredible ride from him. In fact, it was an incredible ride from all three podium people. In P3, we had Marc Marquez. Such an emotional podium. Coming into this weekend, I knew it was going to be tough. Being a firm Marc Marquez fan and a firm Honda fan, from the first moments the videos, the pictures started going up and celebrating the success that Honda have had with Marc Marquez and the success they had together, I was a blubbering mess. I cried way more times than I would like to admit for this weekend because it was just heartbreaking. The content was just so wholesome, but simultaneously heartbreaking. I do want to make it clear that it is celebrating their time together, because both parties have made it very clear that this may not be the end. I truly hope it isn't, because this has been a wonderful partnership, one of the strongest partnerships in MotoGP. It's just been a wholesome weekend. Seeing Mark up on the weekend, on the podium of the sprint, it was really touching, and I am so glad that he got this good result on the Saturday for the Honda. Honda and Mark, they both deserved it. Very, very happy for that P3. P2, we saw Brad Binder. Great result for him, great result for KTM. This podium, as I said, was my perfect podium, because in P1 we had Jorge Martin, so that gap for the championship closed right up. But that also means that Pecco Bagnaia wasn't on the podium. In fact, Pecco was down in P5. Admittedly, he probably played it a little bit safe, although they did say they did have the incorrect tyre choice, otherwise they would have been able to fight at the front. P4 was Maverick Vinales, but that P5 for Pecco Bagnaia was exactly what he needed to do. Because if Jorge Martin won both races, Pecco Bagnaia only needed a pair of P5s to win the championship. So maybe it was damage control. But, great result for Pecco too. One person I do want to talk about is the person who finished in P6, because it's Fabio Di Giannantonio. Impressive ride, but I do think that he didn't overtake Bagnaia intentionally. Allegedly, that is. This is my personal opinion. I think he had the pace to overtake Pecco Bagnaia. Whether he didn't overtake him because he knew if he clipped Bagnaia, it would have huge championship implications. Maybe he didn't want that pressure. Maybe that danger was a bit too much for him. The other reason that could, be there, this could be conspiracy theory Kate, is that he didn't make that move because he has not yet signed for VR46. Maybe he has already signed, and maybe it was a clause? This is way down conspiracy theory lane, and I do not believe this, but maybe there was a clause in there saying that you cannot overtake Pecco Bagnaia if you want this VR46 seat. I don't know, but I do think that Fabio Di Giannantonio had the pace to take Bagnaia. But everyone can have their own opinion on this. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the Saturday. The sprint was sensational. We walked into the Sunday with a little bit closer of a championship fight. That's all I wanted. I wanted to come down to the last race. Come down to that Sunday. It did. We got a race of attrition. We've seen this so much this year. We've seen the brutal races. This I'd consider one of the brutal races. We didn't have all the riders finish. In fact, we didn't have all the points get taken. I'm pretty sure this is the third race this year where we haven't seen a P15 position, because this was a brutal race. It's been a brutal season. I don't know whether it was the weather. We're in Valencia, almost in winter. I didn't think it was going to be a good idea when I first saw it. I was nervous coming into this weekend, but we would have seen conditions that were a lot colder than people have been used to. We are a week earlier next season. Hopefully it's a bit warmer and we don't see this same situation. Although I do want to see the racing come down to the final round of the championship, the final race of the championship. So hopefully we get that same season next year. What a spicy Sunday we got, and I hope we get that next year, because it was incredible. So let's talk about that in just a moment. So we came into Sunday with both Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin in line to possibly win the World Championship. Both teams had the gold helmets, the t-shirts, all the celebration materials lined up in case either rider won the championship. All Jorge Martin had to do was finish in P1 with Pecco in P6 or lower. We saw with the Saturday that Pecco in P5 with Martin in P1, with all these variables, it was a possibility. Admittedly, we got a very different race than I think the majority of us would have wanted. It was spicy and drama from lap 1 to the last lap. But let's start with that very first lap. Coming up to a corner, we've got the battle up the front with Martin and Bagnaia, but we've got Marc Marquez and Marco Bezzecchi. Marco Bezzecchi's taking an outside, well, not an outside line, a wide line. Marc Marquez is on the inside. He clips Bezzecchi, and Bezzecchi crashes out into basically the car park. Bezzecchi had some very, very strong words for everyone involved, and then some. He was extremely angry that Marc Marquez didn't get a penalty. I don't know if he didn't get that penalty because of what plays out later in the race. He was also extremely irritated at Marc Marquez for the move. So he was angry at Marc and the stewards, but he was also extremely angry at TV Race Direction because they don't replay the crash. I don't know if I'm on conspiracy theory lane this weekend, but I do wonder if it didn't get replayed because it's Marc Marquez and his last weekend with Honda. I don't know if it's because of that. I don't know if it's because they wanted to focus on the battles, but I have a big issue also with TV direction this weekend. Because there's a point later in the race, we're watching replays of the incident, which I will get to in just a moment. But we're watching these replays, and I'm watching timing at the same time because I run multiple screens. While we're watching this replay, I see Brad Binder, who at this point of the race is leading. I see him drop from P1 to P6. The replays finish and it cuts back, and all of a sudden the commentators are like, "Where's Binder? What happened to Binder?" I found that really quite irritating because we can do picture in picture. We know this is an option. I do think that when there are important replays, we should be seeing them. But I also think that we should at very minimum have a picture in picture of the main race and what's going on at the time in the corner. So if moments like this happen, we can see them as they happen. So we don't jump back in and see the leader of the race in a totally different position without knowing what's going on. Because it's just not nearly as fun in that situation. But we know in the end that Binder basically took himself through the long lap loop. Bit strange, but before that, I want to talk about that incident. The incident that decided the World Championship. This incident, let's set the scene. Martin runs wide, almost clips the back of Bagnaia with some dirty air. At this point, Bagnaia was in P1, Martin in P2. This incident sent Martin out wide. It pushed him back to P6. It sort of ruined his chances for a clean overtake. It puts him from P2 to P6, like I said, and we know Martin has to win this race. I think at this point, we did see Martin lose his head a little bit, because he was fighting for this championship. We see some aggressive moves from Martin as he starts to push forward to the front. As a Marc Marquez fan, and as a Jorge Martin fan, this incident caused my heart to shatter. It's one of those moments where you just stare and you blink a few times, wondering if you did just see what you saw. What happened was Jorge Martin goes in hot, clips the back of Marc Marquez. They both crash out. My two favourite pilots of this season, possibly of all time, crashing out. Marc has a horrible high side when he gets clipped. It was just, one of those moments which is brutal. Not the way he would have wanted to end his career with Honda. Fortunately, Marc is okay. Fortunately, Martin's okay. Scary incident. It was all over at that point. The championship was decided. I was devastated as a Martin fan. It's just one of those things. Seeing them crash out together, I was not okay. I just couldn't believe it. What I do have to do is give props to Marc Marquez. He doesn't blame Jorge Martin. They both had that killer mindset. We knew Martin was coming into this weekend with win it or bin it. He said so himself before the Sunday race. I just still can't believe it. Still in a bit shock. But that was the replay we were seeing when Binder dropped from P1 to P6. It's just, I understand why we saw that incident replayed the way it did. But like I said, I think having a picture in a picture would be a much more suitable situation. Because there's still a race going on. Sure, this moment decided the championship, but still, that race was still going on, and there was so much more to come. Because Binder didn't just go wide from P1 to P6, he went wide at a time when we had a KTM 1-2. I was so excited, even though my favourites had just crashed out. So Binder goes wide, then we have Jack Miller leading. Our Australian, everyone was on the Viva Miller hype train straight away. And then Jack does what Jack does. He crashes. Why, Jack? Why would you do this to us? The pain. We wanted Viva Miller. We got not Viva. It was heartbreaking. So this was lap 18, so by this point, as I said, we had Bezzecchi, Marc Marquez, Jorge Martin, Jack Miller out. We also lost Augusto Fernandez, Enea Bastianini. I can't remember if those two tangled together. I know they both went down on lap 9. The final rider that crashed out was Alex Rins. Overall, horror, I suppose, for Honda. Only having one rider finish because we came into this weekend without Joan Mir because he had a crash that saw him out for the weekend. But let's talk about the podium initially. And it was initially. Because the podium we saw was Johann Zarco, MP3, Fabio Di Gianantonio, MP2, and Pecco Bagnaia, MP1. It didn't stay that way. So we did see a wonderful last 2 laps where Di Gia could have possibly taken the win if he'd had a little bit more pace. Unlike the Saturday, I just think he couldn't match Bagnaia on the Sunday. He takes the podium, MP2, he celebrates. It's another great result for him. Hopefully he does have a ride next year. A few hours later, I wake up and he's been demoted off the podium. Brad Binder's been put up, which is great for Brad, great for me because I'm a Brad fan, but it's tyre pressures. We knew they were going to play a part, and this is exactly what we didn't want to see. While I am glad it wasn't a championship that was decided, the fact that Digi podiumed, celebrated, we've got all the Parc Ferme photos, everything was looking nice, and then his tyre pressures doomed and he gets demoted to P4. It just shouldn't be happening. I want this rule gone, and I know so many people want this rule gone. It's just a bizarre one. Alas, that was the podium. Pecco Bagnaia took the championship from the top step of the podium. Really, really strong result for him. And overall, he deserved it this season. Jorge Martin also deserved it this season. We have been treated to a wonderful battle. A wonderful championship battle that I'm so glad we got. Because for a good chunk of this year, we weren't sure we were going to get it. And let's not forget, one of the big reasons we did get this championship battle is because Pecco Bagnaia got his legs run over. The guy gets his legs run over and still goes on to win the championship. I have to give the utmost respect to every single rider on that grid. It was a wonderful season, even if it was one that was full of walking wounded, because this season has been pretty darn brutal. We're at the end race, and we haven't seen a full grid on a Sunday. It's rough. It really is rough. But alas, we continue to watch. And overall, I love MotoGP. I'll be back next season. I'm sure most of us will. Whether I'll be watching on Video Pass with the fact that it has been an absolute mess this year is a different topic. But you know, this is racing. It's always exciting. It's always dangerous. There was one other talking point, I suppose, of this weekend, and that was what the heck is happening at RNF. So, coming into this weekend, we heard reports and rumours that Crypto Data were behind on some payments. Being a cryptocurrency firm, it's always a little bit open to interpretation, some of the finer details of their contract. Alas, there was a press conference and a press release held that basically said all these rumours were not true. Not only were they not true, they were going to be holding an internal audit. So Crypto Data are the majority shareholders at 60%, so they'll be holding an internal audit, and also basically Razlan Razali got fired. So he's the team manager of the team. Apparently this decision was made more than a month ago due to shareholder pressure and poor performance. Very odd bit of news, basically. I, for one, have been following RNF for a little bit of a while. I have noticed that there have been lots of rumours about them being absolutely broke. We also know that Pons has stopped their team in Moto3, or is it Moto2? Obviously, sleep deprivation is kicking my ass right now. But we also know he has moved, Cito Pons that is, has moved into an advisory role at RNF. I do have to wonder if he'll be taking over team management. It's going to be an interesting topic to follow in the off-season, and I definitely will be doing that. Not really what they would have wanted coming into the last race. Miguel Oliveira wasn't racing this weekend because of his shoulder blade injury, but I do have to give out massive props to Raul Fernandez, who got a P5, which is his best result. Very, very great ride from him. Overall, what a weekend. Incredible weekend, and I think I'll be going into the summer break very satisfied with what a season we have had. I'm going to leave the pod there for the day because I want to get some sleep. It has been a long day and the racing was at 3 a.m. my time. Thank you all so much for listening. I am going to be releasing content every single week all through the summer break. I'll be covering everything from riders' ratings to testing talking points, so if you do need a MotoGP fix, you know where to find me. Until next week, nap out.